Time for another question. As always, we'll identify the critical parts of the stem, go through the responses, and find the key. We'll also explore why certain responses are correct and why the distractors were not. As a quick reminder, while the questions we're using for these reviews are the same difficulty level and structure as those on the real exam, these are not from the real exam. To use those questions would break the terms and conditions of the AWS certifications to share actual exam questions. This question is related to the networking and content delivery domain, and specifically to implementing networking features and connectivity. So, here's the STEM. An organization is trying to establish a static VPN connection between an on-premises network and an Amazon VPC. A SysOps administrator has created the virtual private gateway, the VPN connection, and the customer gateway. The customer side of the router is also configured, and the connection status shows up in the console. However, when the administrator attempts to connect to an Amazon EC2 instance in the Amazon VPC from one of the on-premises virtual machines, it does not work. How should the route table in the Amazon VPC subnet be modified to remediate the issue? Before we look at the answers, let's evaluate this to identify what we're actually looking for. First, we know that we're dealing with an already created virtual private gateway, VPN connection, and customer gateway. We also know that the customer side is already configured and the status is showing as up. Now we get to an issue. That issue being that when the admin tries to connect to an EC2 instance inside the VPC from the on-premises environment, it doesn't work. The main part of the STEM now comes into play, and that is specifically how do we need to modify the route table in the VPC subnet to remediate the issue. So, now that we've evaluated the STEM, let's look at the responses. We have A, add the route for the virtual private gateway, B, add the route for the VPC endpoint, C, add the route to the internet gateway, and D, add the route for the customer gateway. Now I'll let you take some time to figure out the key on your own. If you feel that you need more than the 7 seconds being provided, feel free to pause this until you are ready, then you can resume. This is your last chance to pause. I'll be resuming in 3, 2, 1, let's go. The key for this STEM is A. We need to add the route for the virtual private gateway. This will enable the connectivity to the appropriate gateway and allow resources in the VPC to access the customer gateway. Now let's go through the distractors. For response B, adding the route for the VPC endpoint, this is not necessary for the VPN to work. The same reasoning goes for the option where we add the route to the internet gateway, option C. Neither of these options will fix the issue that the administrator is encountering. Response D, add the route for the customer gateway, holds no merit as the route table needs entry for the VPC side of the termination point, which is the virtual gateway or VGW, and not the customer gateway. As I stated earlier, access to the customer gateway is provided through the VGW, to which the route would need to be established. Knowing this answer shows that you know how to implement connectivity and apply the VPC networking features, and that you can do basic connectivity troubleshooting with a VPC.